I'm going to try to do my best to stay on 20 minutes. This is probably the one challenge I have because the slides I have, I could do in an hour a day or maybe several days. It's largely my life, and you're going to I hopefully get to hear some funny bits about me learning how to write full stack JavaScript. So the main thing is to know about me. My name is Stewart Noyce. I am a business executive. I have been product management and marketing for 25 years, and I've launched a number of products on the internet. Before that, though, I was a programmer. I started as a computer science major back in the old days, and my first job was actually out of school, was actually on a Unix server, and it was a pretty exciting project. So what I'm going to show you, though, now is that after all that time, I had something I wanted to share, something I'd learned about, in particular, agile strategy iteration, because I saw a lot of pain in those projects over the years, whether as a programmer or as a project leader or as a company executive. And I wanted to build a system for my consultant, as a consultant for my clients, so that they could learn a little bit about what their strategy needed to be successful. And I had to go back, and I don't know why I had to. I mean, really, did I have to go back and write my own code? No. But I wanted to. And I really wanted to learn about JavaScript, and I really wanted to see what was so exciting about the latest wave of technology that's come out around Node and Mongo in particular. So I learned three things. One of them was I need to be doing server-side rendering, and I need an application framework, and don't fight the internet. But I did that for those of us who want to get to the point and see what's going on, but let's get into it right now. Okay, so first of all, how many people here are in a startup? Come on, everybody? No. How about a high-growth company? The rest of you? I hope so. Because you're right here in Silicon Valley, and that's what you should be doing. There's no other place to be doing it, and there's no other thing to be doing, I think, than a startup or something really exciting that has a big idea. Why? Well, because what you're seeing here is that the investors who are pouring money into these companies where you work, maybe into the one that you started, those investors are looking at their portfolio, and they think they're all going to be nice. They think they're all going to be great. But in reality, see, that's this little line here, this perceived, returns from their investment. But the reality is they're going to get their return back from one or two companies in their fund. It's a power law. All the rewards for this industry in a generation go to one company, or two, maybe two. So you have to be on that company at some point, or you're going to be doing another one of these. So let me show you an example. Ancient internet history. How many people remember 1992? Anybody here remember 1992? Okay, good. Good. I remember it very well. It was my first job out of school was a product manager for the network file system at Sun Microsystems. And my second job was to run the SunNet Manager Partners program. So I was responsible for managing the relationship that our network management console had with these network device startups. There were probably 3 or 4 dozen. At the time, we had most of them working with us. And there are a lot of names on here you probably don't remember now. And there's a good reason for that. Because along the way, during the next 8 years after 1992, one of those companies, Cisco, decided that the future, they had a big vision for the future. The future was going to be about integrated voice, video, and data. In particular, I think their application was teleconferencing. They probably had no idea that we would all be looking at cat videos. But for them, it was about the enterprise. And it was about that integrated voice, video, and data. They were way ahead of everyone else. And as a result, they started making significant inroads into the corporate customers. They were building out the internet within the corporations. And they started swallowing up all these companies, or at least enough of them to build out a portfolio inside. They did something super smart, which was that they didn't do the R&D themselves. They just picked the ones that they thought had the best answer, the best solution after they were finished with the venture money. So some of those guys got good exits. But the reality was Cisco was the big winner. And they're the one you should have invested in at the beginning of that decade. Now what's going on here? They took a risk They took a big risk to go make a big idea happen. They took charge of their own destiny. And that's really the key with strategy. You really should be thinking about a big, big idea. And if you're working for a company, you don't have that same kind of diversification that the venture capitalist has. You are your own, right? So within your company, you want it to be really strong. If you're running a company, you want to do the right thing. You want to do the right thing in terms of making a big idea happen. So I spent 25 years as product marketing, product management, a lot of different product launches. Before that, I was writing code. I said, let me see if there was something in all of those projects that I can remember that really was relevant to building a big idea. And what I learned was that the one company that I had gone to NASDAQ with, Certicom, a security company, had all the makings for the big idea. And in fact, the people who took us public, the investment bankers, they told us, you need a really big idea, an unfair advantage, a unique value proposition. You got to have something that nobody else has. You need a business model that pays, and fifth, you need to be able to execute. So if you look at this idea, I said, okay, how am I going to help people that I'm working with make sense out of this? So I came up with an acronym. Everybody has to have an acronym, right? The acronym is GAGE. It stands for the gap in the market, the advantage, unique value proposition, gain, which is the business model, and execution. What I did on top of that was I decided to use a simple formula. I wanted people to be able to use objective criteria, 0, 1, or 2, to put a number down against each of those 5 factors, so you'd have a total of 10. So at the end of the day, you're either 0 to 10. And the problem is, of course, the leaders are the ones who make up who start with this idea, and they write it down. Of course, it's always a 10. But then I let the people on the team respond to that with their confidence in the strategy. So we go through that process and we iterate. So I said, I need software to do this because I want to iterate and I want to keep all those iterations. Okay. Whoops. How do I get rid of that thing now? Come on. Just go here. Really? Okay. All right, so back to where we were. So here I set out with, okay, what are my goals for the software? I need to be able to collect lots of data. The data that I collect, I want to be accurate. I want to know the origin of it. I don't want it to be coming and somebody making this stuff up. I want it to know exactly where it's coming from. So I need a way to collect the data and collect it securely. I need a way to give it some context. So I'm collating it, I'm tagging it, I'm letting people comment on it. So I'm giving people a chance to talk about that data. We have an editor for the leader. We have reviewer software, and we have a way to visualize at the end. So I'm thinking about like the requirements for this. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to build it. And this is, of course, where it gets interesting. I haven't written code for 25 years, and I'm working with JavaScript, which, I mean, it's not exactly like what I used to write in C. You know, I wrote in C. I wrote embedded operating systems, and I wrote in various scripting languages. So JavaScript was different, right? It's very different. There's asynchronous, calls. There's just the chaos of it coming up from the bottom up for all those years, right? Since Netscape introduced it. So there's just this element of confusion and not quite knowing what to do. So I said, well, all right, I'm just going to dive right in, and I'm going to do what I thought was best, which was build a mobile-centered device or software. So I was going to build everything around the mobile interface, and I was going to use on the back end, I was going to have all of my data for the data structure in JSON in Mongo, right? Seems fair. And I was going to use Node as the way to interact with it, so I had to go and learn this new system, which was probably, it was a little bit of a learning curve, but it turns out, of all the things I learned, it was probably the easiest. It's stable. It's stable. It's really great. So is Mongo. I love the fact that I can do so much with those. And as open source tools, I think they're just the most amazing thing. And I recommend the use by anybody. But I don't recommend necessarily the client-side rendering approach. And I'm going to go into detail why. So the first thing is I have my my data structure is in JSON. It's sitting in here. I got my node. And it's all up on Heroku, by the way. It's all in the cloud on Heroku. Nice because you can get a free sandbox, right? I don't have to pay for that. It was sweet. Really sweet, really actually very easy to use. I'll give them a plug. On this side, though, I was using some really basic JavaScript. And everything I got, I Googled, OK? I did web search. I web searched, and I found everything online, and I just copied it, just blatantly copied it. OK, so now, here's where it gets interesting, OK? I had to come up with a way to present the data on the screen. And I wasn't using a library here. I had to take my data structure out of Mongo and then create an entire DOM structure from it. Okay? So I didn't quite know where to start with this, so I found something really cool, which was, you know, I remember tree structures. I can remember doing a recursive descent parser on the tree. I can just create my tree structure that way. So I did this asynchronous recursive descent parser. And it starts with a make panel. This whole thing is make panel. And inside of make panel, I have to make a point. Boom, boom, boom. I get down to the bottom. One of these points might be another panel. So then I go and do that. And inside of that, I'm calling more, you know, points. So it worked. It worked. It was very difficult to manage. It was very difficult to debug. And I would, whenever I had to do that, I would spend, you know, a day just kind of looking through it and trying to write it down and trying to figure out what's going on. But it did work. And that was what was, I think, interesting and compelling to me, because what I did was I came up with not exactly what I intended to build, but in my path, right, my learning about JavaScript, I actually came up with something cool, which was a JSON editor. I mean, literally, I'm editing the JSON that's in the Mongo database, and I can update it using and now we're going to try something here. So this is the point. You slide over, you see the next point, and you can do that indefinitely. I can add points to it here. I can go down and I can you know, edit that point. And I built an editor, and then I could save it right here. I could press that button and save it. And that was it's kind of my big idea, was to just to be able to work with the applications themselves. So maybe I could build applications on top of it. Well, okay, so the reality of this was, it had been a couple months, and my wife got on the phone with my mother, and she said, he's writing an operating system and all of his libraries, and he's reinventing all these things that people are already doing. Who does that? Well, I think everybody in this room knows who does that. You do, right? We all do. This is what we do. If you start out as a programmer, it's what you do. And you know, but I did have to take that to heart, and I said, okay, you know, that is probably my first lesson there, because if I think about it, like, realistically, I've spent a lot of time on this, and I haven't really made progress on the first application. So that was my first clue. I'm spending too much time on system design, right? I'm spending too much time trying to figure out how the compatibility works between these browsers. I don't have time to do that myself. There are probably people doing that. Oh, of course there are, right? Of course there are. So once I got over that hurdle of I should go start looking at some options, I did find some options. And one of those was Express. I plugged it in. It just worked right away. You know, and this is probably the coolest thing. Express, with its server routes and JTemplates, was a really fast way for me to get started. And then using Bootstrap and jQuery libraries on the front end was a great way to get, you know, some of that compatibility solved. Meanwhile, I had other issues I was looking at around server-side that were of the value of server-side rendering, some of which were just like privacy and security of some of the code that you had. Some of it was search engine optimization, and some of it had to do with speed. So I just said, all right, let's go for it. And I built out my application now with archives. So all of the data that's going to be in my strategy iteration is now in the archives, and I have routes that go and, you know, pull up the data that I need. And that's when I had my tools. I built them. It took me about a week. Once I got going, it actually took only about a week. And this is what I think was for me was one of that first huge lesson was going to the libraries, going to what is already working, going to the server base, and I think Robert's going to come up next and talk to us about Express. That was a major step forward for me. So here is my application. This is the part where I am, as an editor or leader, writing in my strategy iteration. So I have gap, advantage, unique, gain, execution. I'm writing in a paragraph. I'm giving it a 0, 1, or 2. And I'm kind of making my own comment on why I gave it that objective rating. So now I have the data in here. I can press save. And with a different action, which is the action of reviewing, I can actually bring up now a review screen. So now my various users, the people on my team, can read this and then comment on it. And so I was using jQuery to do some sliding things, which is kind of cool. So right here I'd have these like really whizzy little things, and you could go in here and edit this, and it would, once I did that, I was actually editing and punching the changes directly into my data structure back in Mongo. So I'd like learned all these really cool things, but it was all hand rolled, right? Everything hand rolled. And it's particularly on the let me make sure I'm doing okay on time here. Particularly on the front end side, you know, we're really talking about let's go down to I'm actually on the wrong one. Sorry. But what I was going to show you was that what I'm really looking at here is, you know, everything is plugged directly in here, right? And when I go to grab with jQuery the piece of data that I want in my structure that I've changed, and then push it to the, basically everything is kind of in the DOM. And when it's all in the DOM, you can't easily go in and find it and debug and edit it. So I was really kind of at another juncture where I was saying, well, what have I learned from this? And that became my second lesson. I need to do something with an application framework. So an application framework would give me that, like what Angular brings or what Backbone brings, which is something on the front end, on that client, that would hold the structure and would keep track of the data that you were using. So that was my big sort of second lesson. And here I learned about drywall. I ran into a guy who helped me to learn about drywall. Anybody here know about drywall? A few people? So it's a nice little framework that what it does is it pulls those pieces together. And then what I did on top of that with drywall was find a way to quickly push that up into the cloud with a demo space for D3 visualization. So I added a little bit of overlay to it. It wasn't terribly hard, but it helped me to do this, which was to bring down the two structures into one demo space, and then to push that demo space up to Heroku to use it. Okay, so that leads me to this point. Okay, so we're about done here. So I just want to share with you, though, that in the process of doing all this work, what I really learned was a lot more about agile strategy iteration. Because of all the things that you can do with your company, just talking about it, just interacting, and just going and looking at each of those steps. Do you have a big market? Do you have unique advantage that is special that you can grow and build over time? All of those things pointed me in the direction of healthcare, and in particular where there's a huge problem in healthcare right now. And that is that we're spending probably 2/3 of our $2.9 trillion that we spend on healthcare on chronic disease and chronic diseases and the management of them. Now, everybody here looks pretty healthy, but there are a lot more people in the United States that aren't, and they're the ones using an enormous amount of our money. So I'm working with somebody now, and he has a great technology, and we started looking at, we have a big, huge market, we have a great technology, we have now a unique value proposition in and around stem cell transplantation, we're looking for a way to get paid, and we're looking for money. So we're actually pretty good on that gauge scale, but we have some work to do. And I wanted to show you, though, this last demo, so that you could, before I go there, I want to show you this demo because it is somewhat interesting. So here, I actually, with drywall and with the tool that I built, I was able to actually develop a web site within about a day. right, that has all of our information for our company, but it also does one more thing. So here I have the home page. I have an about page. So we have a picture of me and my partner here, right? So there I am, and there's Jason. And we're working on this cool idea to measure RNA inside the body, so we can do have molecular level visibility, get that data out into a platform, and then people like yourself can go build apps on it. So I want to be able to show that, how we are collecting data, so to potential investors. So I said, well, let's put in a demo live in the app. And that's where this came up. So now this is a D3 visualization with data that's in the Mongo database. And it comes up in the same app that I'm using to build my just my website. But plus now I have contact me, and I have other data, other ways that I can do data collection in this app. And so what I did, if I learned anything from all this third lesson that I learned, I would say that it's don't fight the internet. So the internet's this huge mountain, right? It's this huge mountain. I mean, now it's been 25 years of growth, and there are still lots of places where you can go walk up that mountain and have a beautiful view. But you want to walk on top of the paths that have been laid for you. And what you may find after you've taken that path is actually quite extraordinary and may change your life. So that's what I wanted to share today. And I really recommend that, again, stick to reliable, documented, familiar libraries, things you know well. Use each library for what it does well. It is what it is. And really watch the well-funded players, because they're the ones that are going to be bringing out the next set of libraries you should be using. That's my talk for today. Thank you very much.